everybody, it's Movie Buff Beth and I'm back again with another Everything I Watched video. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I watched in the month of March. If you've never watched one of these videos before, I just quickly recap everything that I watched in the month, including movies and TV. I think I only watched one TV show in its entirety this month, and I'm sure you guys can guess which one that is. But without further ado, I'll just go ahead and jump right into all of my watches. I watched 65 titles for the first time in the month of March, so right on track to get to my 750 first time watches for the year. I mentioned that a couple videos ago that I'm trying to watch 750 films for the first time in 2021, and I really do want most of them to come from my collection. However, I did watch some things on streaming this month. I tend to have some downtime at work, so sometimes I'll watch movies there. I also did a little bit of traveling in March, so I watched some stuff at the airport and while on the airplane, a few things like that. But I did watch a lot of physical media. I have 3 huge stacks of Blu-ray sitting next to me. I've got stuff from all kinds of different genres, a bunch of different labels are represented here, so really excited to talk about what I watched. The first film I watched in March is a film from 2011 called A Separation. I talked about this briefly in my last recent highlights video if you want to go check that out. Those are videos that I do just so that I can spend a little more time with some of my favorite recent watches. This is definitely one of my favorite watches of the year so far. I'd heard many wonderful things about this film over the years, and I just recently added it to the collection finally and was able to give it a watch, and it definitely did not let me down. I've heard some people say this is like a better version of Marriage Story, which I'm a huge fan of Marriage Story, but I could definitely see where they're coming from with that. It is a really well done drama where you take a look at what is right and wrong. Is there a black and white in every decision? It was just a really interesting examination of like some moral issues and 2 sides to every story, that kind of thing. If that sounds like something that of interest to you, I definitely recommend checking it out. This of course is a foreign film, so it will have subtitles. In the words of Bong Joon-ho, don't let that 1-inch barrier get in the way of all of these amazing films that are out there in the world. And another one of my goals for 2021 is to watch a lot more foreign films. And I haven't been doing great on that goal, but I am getting there. I'm watching more, and this was definitely a worthwhile watch. Very happy I gave this a watch. I give this an easy 5 stars. This is a wonderful film. Another thing that I'm doing right now is I'm participating in the Criterion challenge. I talk about this briefly in my Criterion flash sale haul if you want to hear a little bit more about that. Admittedly, I've kind of been slacking on it a bit. I've only watched a few films from my list so far. However, I have been watching a bunch of Criterions, so I'm gonna kind of give myself a pass on that. And the first film that I watched for the Criterion challenge is 1984's The Hit, directed by Stephen Frears and starring Tim Roth. First of all, I have to say Tim Roth is one of my favorite character actors. I think he's really underrated. He's one of those guys that I feel like a lot of moviegoers just kind of see him in movies and recognize him but don't really know who he is, but I think he's a wonderful actor. I especially really like him in Fun and Games. But yeah, I just think he's a great actor. This was an interesting film. The theme of the first day of the challenge, of the Criterion challenge, was to watch a film from the year of Criterion's inception, which is 1984. And so I picked The Hit because this is one of my recent pickups from the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale. And I definitely enjoyed this. I think this is probably going to be a film that I enjoy more on future watches. There was kind of a lot to digest, a lot of really fast-moving dialogue and things, and I feel like you have to be kind of in a certain mood for this type of film. That said though, I definitely enjoyed it. I would probably give this a 4 out of 5. Like I said, I've been watching a lot of stuff from various labels in my collection. The next label I'm going to talk about, and this is one I don't talk about very often, and that is Synapse. They released a wonderful release of one of my all-time favorite films, Dario Argento's Suspiria. It's in 4K, it looks fantastic, and this is a fairly recent release from them, and they don't release a lot. It's very few and far between, but it's worth it when they release stuff. This is a film from 1976 called Massacre at Central High. I've been interested in this one ever since they announced that they were releasing it, which was, if I'm remembering correctly, quite a few years ago. But yeah, I was very interested in this one, simply just because of the title and the fact that it came out in the 70s. I love 70s horror. I will say that this film was a little bit different than what I was expecting. I try to go into a lot of films like this not knowing too much about the plot, just because I like to be surprised, and I feel like a lot of the time, if you read the plot synopses of films like this, you get some some plot points spoiled, and I didn't want that to happen with this one. But yeah, this one was definitely different than I was expecting. When you get a film that has Massacre in the title, kind of expect it to be just like a down and dirty slasher, just a fun high kill count type movie. This one is definitely not that. This one kind of had more of like a Lord of the Flies type feel mixed with a 1970s exploitation film. So if I had gone in expecting that, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more, but I did still enjoy it. And I definitely look forward to revisiting this one kind of with better expectations as to what I'm getting out of the film. But this is a worthwhile watch, especially if that sounds interesting to you, because it has, you know, again, that like Lord of the Flies exploitation type feel. So overall, I give this one a 4 out of 5, and it does have somewhat of a misleading title, so kind of just be prepared for that. And this is a really cool release. It is a steelbook with a slipcover. I won't show you the back of the slipcover because there is some nudity on there, but I'll go ahead and show you the steelbook, which is super nice. Really nice cover there. Love that. I still have the J card on the back. I don't know why I haven't taken it off, but yeah, they don't mess around with their steelbooks. Synapse does some great stuff, great work with their releases. So if you guys have never picked up anything from Synapse, know that you're going to be buying something great. Even though they don't have as many releases as some of the other boutique labels, their releases are wonderful. And if you are a fan of Suspiria and for some reason you don't own the Synapse release, you need to rectify that right now and pick it up, because like I said, it is a wonderful release and one of my favorite films of all time. Next up, this is a rewatch. I talked about this in my recent highlights video as well, and this is 2005's Elizabethtown, put out by Paramount Presents. I was so excited when Paramount announced that they were releasing this, because I love this film. I love Cameron Crowe as a director. I think he makes awesome movies, and this is one of his more underrated entries. Like I discussed in that video, this is a really interesting examination of grief and dealing with life's changes and all that it throws at you. And it really meant a lot to me, especially with some of my recent life events, and I think I enjoyed it even more than I did on first watch, which I enjoyed it a lot the first time I saw it, so that's saying something. But I absolutely love this film, and if you guys have never seen it, this Paramount Presents release is definitely worth picking up. It has a lot of the same extras from previous releases, as well as a new filmmaker focus with Cameron Crowe, which I thought was pretty interesting. Transfer looked wonderful. I mean, I'm just so happy that this is on Blu-ray. This is a new 4K restoration. I'll go ahead and show you the back so you can see those special features that are on there. And yeah, this is a wonderful film. I absolutely love this movie. Your mileage may vary because, I mean, you know, film is subjective, and I know that this isn't everyone's favorite film, but I know that there are several people out there that really do love this one, and Andrew loved it as well, and I was really excited about that because, you know, when a movie means a lot to you and you show it to the person that means the most to you in life, you do kind of hope that they will at least enjoy it, and he also gave it 5 stars, just like me. So definitely check out Elizabethtown if you haven't yet, and if you have enjoyed Cameron Crowe's other films like Say Anything, Almost Famous, definitely give Elizabethtown a watch. It's a great film starring Orlando Bloom and Kirsten Dunst, and I just can't sing its praises enough. I love it. And we have another Paramount Presents release here, and that is 1955's The Court Jester. This stars Danny Kaye, and again, it is a Paramount Presents release. I had never heard of this film before Paramount announced that they were releasing it, but they did an awesome job on the transfer. I mean, this is a fairly old film. This is the 65th anniversary of it, and they did a 6K film transfer for this release, which is pretty amazing. I can't say that this movie was fully my cup of tea. I'm not really into this genre of film, but I definitely did get some enjoyment out of it, and I think Andrew really did enjoy it. He likes Danny Kaye a lot. Overall, I would give this film a 3.5 out of 5. Again, it's not really my cup of tea, but it is a really good film and it looks fantastic. So if you are a fan of the film or just a fan of Danny Kaye and these types of films, definitely pick up this Paramount Presents release. Next up, this is another label that I do not talk about enough on the channel. They do have less releases than some of the other labels, but they are very consistently releasing new stuff and just doing some great work. And this is a film from 1982 called The Fan. I've heard about this over the years many times, and I finally sat down and gave it a watch, and I definitely enjoyed this one. This is a German film. I did watch it with the German audio and English subtitles. I usually prefer that unless, you know, it's like an Italian film where a lot of the language is dubbed anyway, so you might as well watch it in English. But yeah, the fan really enjoyed this. It was a very bleak, dark, like stalker horror film. I don't want to say too much about the plot because I don't want to give anything away, but the story definitely takes some really shocking turns, and if you are into these types of films, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this one. I give this one a 4 out of 5. Next up is a release from Criterion, and that is 2005's Man Push Cart. I talked about this again in my Criterion flash sale haul because I watched it pretty much immediately after it arrived in the mail. But I did enjoy this one. If you're into like slow moving character studies, I think that you will definitely enjoy this. It is not plot heavy. It doesn't even delve much into the character's backstory. You're kind of just thrown into his life and experiencing his life day to day. I know that that doesn't work for everyone, so if you're not into that type of film, I don't think you would really enjoy this one. But again, if you like those slow moving character pieces, I think that you will find some enjoyment in this one. And this was the debut film from this director, so really impressive in my opinion, and I definitely enjoyed it. Overall, I would give this film a 4.5 out of 5. Really did enjoy this one, and it's a great release from Criterion. Go ahead and show the back so you can check out the supplements and read a little bit more about what it's about if you are interested. Then I also watched this director's second film. I should mention his name is Ramin Barani, and this is from 2007 and it's called Chop Shop. Also really enjoyed this one, kind of in the same vein as Man Push Cart, where you just have characters, mainly just this young boy and his sister, that you're just thrown into their life and kind of experiencing their day-to-day life. And this one kind of reminded me of like the Florida Project, where you have a kid that is just experiencing a lot of really adult grown-up things that they shouldn't have to experience when they are that young, and kind of just how they deal with it. I really enjoyed this one as well. I can't even really say which one I enjoyed more. I think that they were both just wonderful character pieces, and I enjoyed them both a lot. This one I would also give a 4.5 out of 5. And again, another great release from Criterion. These are both pretty recent releases, so if you want to grab them in the next Barnes & Noble sale, I'd definitely recommend you do so. This is a recent pickup from Hamilton Book, and that is 1957's The Three Faces of Eve, starring Joanne Woodward. I didn't really know anything about this film before, but I saw the title and the cover and the fact that it is a 20th Century Fox Studio Classics release, and decided to go ahead and grab it. It was like $5 or less. Also, I was very interested in the premise of this film. I really enjoy films that tackle mental health. It can be difficult to watch them sometimes because it is often misrepresented in film and kind of demonized and villainized in a lot of ways. But I thought that this was a really interesting examination of mental health. Basically, Joanne Woodward, she plays a woman who has multiple personalities disorder. Her name is Eve White. She's a troubled housewife who begins seeing a psychiatrist, and under hypnosis, Eve's two additional personalities are revealed: a vamp and an independent sophisticate, but curing her will require a probe into her disturbing past. And again, this came out in 1957, so I went in a little bit nervous as to how this disorder was going to be depicted, but I was really rather impressed with how they approached it. And Joanne Woodward gave a really harrowing performance. And her husband, although his character was very frustrating in the way that he responded to what was happening, I felt like it was kind of realistic as to how someone might react if their spouse suddenly began behaving this way. You know, it's not the way you would want your spouse to react, but I felt like it was kind of a realistic depiction of how one might act in that situation. But yeah, Joanne Woodward is definitely the highlight of this film. She's fantastic in the role. I think the movie could have been a little bit better. I think it could have delved a little bit deeper into what was going on with Eve and things, but overall, I definitely did enjoy this, and just a fantastic performance from Joanne Woodward. I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Next up is a movie I checked out on Netflix, and that's 2021's Moxie. This is directed by Amy Poehler. I didn't hear too much about this one before it came out, but as soon as I saw that it was directed by Amy Poehler, I had to give it a watch, and I definitely did enjoy this one. I love coming-of-age teen films. I always worried that I would not like them as much as I got older, but I've still really enjoyed them even in adulthood. and this was no exception. I really liked all of the characters in this film. Let me go ahead and read what it's about so you can kind of get some context to what I'm talking about. But this says, inspired by her mom's rebellious past and a confident new friend, a shy 16-year-old publishes an anonymous zine calling out sexism at her school. And yeah, this movie really tackles, you know, some of the issues of sexism and racism and things like that. And again, I really liked a lot of the characters. One of the common complaints that I saw in reviews upon reading about the film is that a lot of people felt like the main character shouldn't have been the main character. It should have been her friend. And I can kind of agree with that because, you know, you do have like the white girl as the lead character, which is a little annoying. But also when you look at it, it's directed by Amy Poehler. I mean, it might be a little more reflective of her own experience. I don't know. But either way, I did appreciate that this tackled a somewhat heavy subject matter, but it did it in a way that would reach teens and would be interesting and not like super preachy. And it does have moments of levity, but it kind of knows where to put the humor in and doesn't, you know, take things lightly that it shouldn't. And I did appreciate that about it. I think that this is a film that could really connect with a lot of teens and again, tackle a somewhat difficult subject matter in a light and humorous way. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed Moxie overall. I'd probably give this a 4 out of 5. We have another Criterion watch here from 1985, and that is Smooth Talk, starring Laura Dern, who is just a wonderful actress. You know, funny thing, growing up, I kind of thought she was not the greatest because I knew her from Jurassic Park, and admittedly that's not one of her best performances, and so I kind of always thought that she was just kind of a so-so actress. But I've gone back and watched a lot of her other work, like Wild at Heart and this one, and I've just been blown away by her every time. I think she's a great actress. But that was a little tangent. This film is directed by Joyce Chopra. This is another really recent release from Criterion. This film is kind of a bubblegum looking coming of age film, which it does kind of start out as, but it quickly delves into much darker subject matters. And I thought that it was a really interesting character study mixed with a really interesting 80s coming of age film. So if that sounds like it would be interesting to you, I'm sure that you will enjoy this one. Overall, I give this a 4 out of 5. And the transfer looked great from Criterion. Was really happy with this one. I think Olive Films released this one previously on Blu-ray. I never picked it up that way, but happy to have a Criterion release now. Next up was another watch on Netflix, and that's 2016's Tramps. Mostly checked this one out because I have wanted to watch more with Callum Turner, who I recently saw in Emma, which was a great flick. And I just wanted to see more with him, and I checked this one out. Basically, it just says a young man and woman find love in an unlikely place while carrying out a shady deal. So yeah, these two characters, they come together to complete, like it said, a shady deal where they're not even really sure what the ins and outs of it are, and a mistake happens, and they end up having to spend a lot more time together than they initially planned, and they end up kind of liking each other, and it kind of just goes from there. It's a very simple premise, pretty quick runtime, but overall I did enjoy this film. I thought the performances were really good. Callum Turner is just a great actor, and I think that he elevates a lot of the things that he's in. And yeah, I enjoyed this film. Definitely worth a watch on Netflix if you guys have a spare moment. I give this a 3.5 out of 5. And going right along with that theme of Callum Turner, I watched 2017's The Only Living Boy in New York. Yes, this is still wrapped in plastic. I actually watched it on Amazon Prime. It's an Amazon Prime original. And I went ahead and picked up this Blu-ray shortly after I watched it because I definitely enjoyed it, and I like to have physical media, and I was happy to see that there was a Blu-ray release of this one. I thought that was awesome. Unfortunately, I do think it is a BDR, so it's a burn disc and not a press disc, but physical media is physical media, so I'm happy to have it. I didn't enjoy this one as much as Tramps, but you do have a really good cast in here, and a somewhat decent story. I mean, the characters are a little bit pretentious for my taste, but I did enjoy it. You also have Kate Beckinsale, Pierce Brosnan, Cynthia Nixon, and Jeff Bridges, so pretty wonderful cast. Overall, an okay movie, not one I will probably revisit right away, but it's definitely one I'll watch again at some point. And I really did appreciate how the film was shot. It was beautifully shot, it had some great cinematography, better cinematography than I think it even deserved to have at some points. But yeah, I would give this a 3 out of 5. Like I've mentioned in a few of my recent videos, I've really been getting into 1960 cinema, and this film is definitely one of the reasons why. This is a film from 1968. This is put out by Grindhouse Releasing, and that is The Swimmer, starring Burt Lancaster. So this came quite a bit later in Burt Lancaster's filmography. You know, his heyday was much earlier than this, but this is probably the first film I've ever seen with him, and I was very, very impressed by him. After watching this film, I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole of seeking out some of his other films. But either way, this is probably one of the best character studies I have ever seen. It really throws you into the psyche of this character and just how difficult of a place he is in life. And on the front here, it has a quote from Roger Ebert. It says, "A strange stylized work and a brilliant and disturbing one." I think that's a really good description. I don't think I've ever seen a film that's quite like this. The movie follows Burt Lancaster's character Ned, where he is just, you know, heading home, and he gets this idea that he wants to go swimming in every single pool in town on his way home. And you're kind of just thrown into this plot very quickly, but the whole time you can kind of tell that there's some unease, there's something wrong, and you kind of start to put puzzle pieces together as the film goes along. And that's all I'll really say about it, because I don't want to spoil anything. But again, it's just a really interesting character study where you're not given all the information up front, and you kind of have to fill in the blanks and kind of have to see where the plot is going. But I really appreciated that about it. You know, it didn't spoon feed the plot or spoon feed what is going on with the character at all. You really kind of had to figure it out, and I really did like that. And this is a really cool release from Grindhouse Releasing. Pretty different than a lot of the other stuff they've released, but it's a very cool release nonetheless. And again, I'm really looking forward to watching more with Burt Lancaster in the future. If you guys have some recommendations on Burt Lancaster films I should check out, please comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Overall, though, I give this film a 4.5 out of 5. Absolutely loved this one. Next up is another watch on Netflix, and that is 2018's Dumplin. This stars Danielle McDonald and Jennifer Aniston. First of all, I have to say, Danielle McDonald, I really like her. She's a really impressive actress. I've liked her in pretty much everything that I've seen her in, and this is no exception. This film has been on my watch list pretty much since it came out on Netflix, but a lot of the times, you know, Netflix movies kind of get put on the back burner and I just forget about them. But I finally gave this one a watch, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a love letter to Dolly Parton, and it's a really good example of self-love and just accepting yourself and, you know, being okay with who you are. And I think that that's a beautiful message, and one that although it comes up a lot, it's one that everybody still needs to hear every once in a while. And I really like Jennifer Aniston in this film. It was a different type of role for her. You know, we usually see her in kind of like cheesy romantic comedies and things, but definitely had a little bit more depth in this film, and I enjoyed seeing that. Overall, I give this film a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched 2021's Rhea and the Last Dragon. Of course, we had to watch this one as soon as it came out. Andrew's a huge animation buff, huge Disney buff, so we had to check it out. Overall, I didn't love it, didn't hate it. I thought it was just kind of middle of the road, to be honest. The animation was beautiful. The story was really interesting. I just didn't fully connect with it. I'll definitely have to give it a rewatch when it comes out on 4K, but overall I enjoyed it. I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5. Sorry guys, I know I'm already spending so much time on all these films that I have so many more to get through, so I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. I say that every time I do these videos, sorry guys. But the next one I watched is 2014's Faults. I watched this on Amazon Prime, I do believe. This stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I'm a huge fan of her. I'll probably mention her many times on the channel. But this was a really interesting dark comedy. Took a lot of turns that I was not expecting. I would say go into this one as blind as you possibly can, and I think that you'll enjoy it, especially if you like dark comedies. It was just very well done. I give this a 4 out of 5. And then, like everybody else in the world, I finished WandaVision, a 2021 series on Disney Plus. I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite things that Marvel has done in recent years. I was into it from the get-go. I mean, I know a lot of people were kind of on the fence the first 3 or 4 episodes, but I was all in. I knew that it wasn't going to just, you know, stay the way that it was at the beginning, but I was all in from the start. I loved the quirky humor, the fun tie-ins to old sitcoms, and every week we were really excited to see what the theme of the next week was going to be. And I love the cast. Elizabeth Olsen is just a fantastic actress. Paul Bettany is great, of course, but Catherine Hahn, she's the real highlight from the very start. One of my favorite character actresses, but it is great to see her finally getting her due. All of that being said, again, I don't want to delve into spoiler territory too much, but I was a little bit disappointed with the ending because it was different than anything that Marvel had been doing, which was a breath of fresh air for me. But I felt like the ending kind of just delved right back into that normal, like, Marvel-y type ending, if that makes sense. I didn't love the ending. I wish that they had kind of gone a different direction with it. I don't know what direction I would have taken it, but I wish that it had stayed, you know, truly original the whole time. And I felt like it did just delve into that really familiar Marvel territory near the end. But overall, I definitely loved the series. I'll definitely go back and rewatch it. It'll be fun to watch it all in a row, you know, now that they've all been released. But yeah, definitely enjoyed WandaVision. I give it 4.5 out of 5. One of my favorite things that Marvel's ever done, to be honest. Moving on, I watched 1989's The Wizard. This is put out by Shout Select, stars Fred Savage. Big Fred Savage fan. I wish I had seen this when I was a kid because I definitely would have loved the hell out of this. And you also got alternate artwork on the inside here. Sorry, I keep forgetting to show that, but yeah. I definitely would have loved the hell out of this when I was a kid, but nonetheless, I did enjoy this. I think it had a lot of really fun video game references. When he pulled out the power glove, me and Andrew both freaked out. We thought that was awesome. I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely a lot of fun. And if you guys have little ones, I'm sure that they could appreciate this one. But yeah, Wizard, a lot of fun. Kind of in that same vein of video game movies, we watched 2018's Ready Player One. This is a movie that Andrew and I both really enjoy. I don't think it's like a fantastic film by any means, but it is so much fun. The Shining scene is epic. I love all of the horror references that are thrown in there. Like Chucky near the end is really cool. You know, obviously just tons of pop culture references for you to enjoy. It's a really cool lenticular from Target. Sorry, I got distracted looking at it. But also it looks fantastic on 4K, sounds fantastic. You got a Dolby Atmos track on here. If you're just looking for a fun feast on the eyes to watch on your 4K TV, this one is an awesome choice and just a really, really fun movie. Love letter to pop culture. Always do enjoy giving this one a watch. I give it a 4 out of 5 just because it's so much fun. Next, we watched a 2021 film on Hulu called Boss Level. This is yet again another time loop movie. I did not enjoy this as much as Palm Springs or The Map of Tiny Perfect Things if you're wanting to watch a time loop movie. However, this one is very actiony, kind of more in the vein of like Edge of Tomorrow. I am a little burnt out on the time loop movie trope, to be honest, but this one I did enjoy. It stars Frank Grillo and Naomi Watts, huge fan of her, and you got Mel Gibson as well, so really solid cast. It throws you right into the action, which I did appreciate. We don't need like a huge like backstory, it just throws you right in. I think the first act is really solid. It kind of loses some steam in the middle though, and kind of pulls you back in near the end, but overall I give this a 3.5 out of 5. If you're looking for a fun actiony movie, look no further than Boss Level, and you can watch it for free on Hulu, so definitely give it a watch if it sounds interesting. To give you an idea of how slow I'm going, I'm only on to March 8th. My goodness, I need to hurry up. But March 8th was International Women's Day. Something that I try to do every year on International Women's Day is watch films directed by women, and I definitely did that this year. I watched 3 movies. First one is 2019's Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde. You guys know this is one of my all-time favorite films. So fucking funny. It makes me laugh like the first time, every single time that I watch it. It is wonderful. I even sat down and watched some of the special features on here. Some really good interviews with like Olivia Wilde and Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein. Just such an awesome movie. If you guys haven't seen this for some reason, you gotta watch it. It's so good. And I'm pretty sure it is still available on Hulu, but if not, buy the Blu-ray. It's amazing. I love this movie. 5 out of 5. And the next thing I watched was a first time watch. I wish there was a Blu-ray available in the US. However, I think there is one in the UK, so I'll probably have to import that. This is directed by Catherine Bigelow and the screenplay is written by James Cameron, and that is Strange Days. Sorry, I forgot to say the year. This one came out in 1995. Always heard about this movie, but had never given it a watch. and I definitely enjoyed this one. Catherine Bigelow is a fantastic director. She is, I believe, the only female director to have won Best Director, I believe, for The Hurt Locker, which is a crime because there's so many fantastic female directors out there. But this is a really cool technology-driven sci-fi thriller. Some great performances. You got Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis. I mean, a great 90s cast there for you. And this says, New Year's Eve, 1999, anything is possible, nothing is forbidden. Really enjoyed this film. I'd give this a 4.5 out of 5. And another rewatch is 2003's Lost in Translation, directed by the great Sofia Coppola, one of my all-time favorite directors. I talked about this in my recent highlights video. Sorry to keep mentioning that, but you know, I want you guys to hear my full thoughts, my non-rushed thoughts on this film. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested in hearing that. I absolutely love this film. One of the best directed, best performed films of all time. The soundtrack is fantastic. This is just one of those movies that you can just throw on and watch and enjoy, and it's just so comforting and relaxing. I don't even know what it is about this film, but I just absolutely love it. This is a 5 out of 5 star film. Next up, we have a release from Scream Factory, and that is 1988's Twice Dead. This unfortunately sold out very quickly. Trap Factory's recently been doing these limited releases of some of their Roger Corman produced titles that they have. They limit them to 1,000, but the issue with that is that they allow you to buy 5 copies, so scalpers are probably buying these up. But that's a whole other subject matter. I wish they didn't do that because, you know, the fans, they need to be able to buy these movies, not the scalpers. But either way, this is a fun flick. It kind of reminded me of like The New Kids and Tough Turf, you know, where you've got these really punk bullies that are the villains of the film. This definitely isn't like a straight horror movie, but it definitely has a lot of horror elements. It's not a great movie, it's not super well done, but I just had so much fun with it. This one I give a 3 out of 5. Next up, we have a release from Vinegar Syndrome. This is 1989's Hitcher in the Dark. This is directed by Umberto Lenzi, fantastic Italian director. Definitely did enjoy this one. It's a gritty, down and dirty exploitation horror flick. My one complaint about it would be that it is called Hitcher in the Dark and mostly takes place during the day, which was kind of odd, but it is an enjoyable flick. Got some alternate artwork there. Looks awesome. If you're into these kinds of movies, if you're into exploitation horror films, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this one. Definitely worth a pickup if you're into Vinegar Syndrome's catalog. Overall, I give this a 3 out of 5. Enjoyable flick. Next up, I watched 2003's Oldboy. Yes, this is still sealed. This is the 4K copy I recently grabbed, and this is the easiest one to pull off the shelf to show you guys. But like I mentioned in my recent highlights video, this film was absolutely fantastic. No holds barred, violent revenge flick. Absolutely loved this film. This is an easy 5 out of 5 for me, and I'm really looking forward to watching it in 4K. But yeah, Oldboy, fantastic movie. And yet another one I mentioned in that recent highlights video, and that is 1967's The Young Girls of Rochefort, directed by Jacques Demy. This is put out by Criterion, available in the Jacques Demy box set, but also available separately if you just want to pick this one up. Another wonderful musical from Jacques Demy, right up there with Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and one of my favorite films of the 60s. Just really fun and catchy music, beautiful cinematography, so many beautiful colors and things, great performances. Just love this film. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Now, I don't usually talk about the adult films that I watch, but this one was on a letterbox, so I thought I'd go ahead and talk about it just briefly. This is from 1973, of course, put out by Vinegar Syndrome, and that is Bijou. This is a early film from Wakefield Pool, and I can't remember where I saw it. It might be on here somewhere, or I saw it online somewhere, but it was like, if David Lynch directed a porno, this is what it would be like. And yes, I can say I agree with that. Very trippy, very weird, but if that sounds interesting to you, give it a watch. It was enjoyable. Sorry guys, I'm talking way too much. I'm trying to get through these a little bit quicker. But next up, we have a film from 1977 or 1978. I'm not sure. It says 77 on Letterboxd, 78 on the disc, but either way, from the 70s, we have Tinterra Tiger Shark. This is released by Kino Lorber and Scorpion. Me and Andrew really like to watch Jaws ripoffs together. This is one of the, I think, 3 or 4 that we watched in the month of March. It's not very good. It focuses on the characters much more than it should. It really tries to make you care about these characters, but there are still some really fun moments, really cool shots with the tiger shark in there. But again, I think it just focused on the characters a bit too much for its own good. Overall, I give it a 2.5 out of 5. I'd probably watch it again. I did enjoy it. It has that fun Italian flair to it, but yeah, it was just okay. Next up, from 1997, I watched Breakdown. This is a movie I've wanted to see for a very long time. Stars Kurt Russell. This is put out by Imprint Films, a company out of Australia. Their discs are kind of expensive to import, so I'm not sure how many I will have in the collection, but they do some nice releases, and again, I've been wanting to see this movie for a really long time. I will say, if you are into just really simplistic 90s thrillers, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this one. It has some great performances. Kurt Russell is fantastic here. Got some special features on there as well. If you're a fan of the film, this will probably be worth the cost. If you can check it out on streaming or something before, if you haven't seen it, definitely do that to decide if it's worth picking up. This is a Paramount title though, I do believe, so hopefully we'll be getting a US release at some point. But yeah, just a really fun 90s thriller with some great performances, great tension. I give this a 4 out of 5. Next up was another film I checked out on Netflix, and that is 2016's Carrie Pilby. This is a film I've wanted to see since it was released. I really like Belle Powley. She's in one of my favorite films, Diary of a Teenage Girl, and she was fantastic here as well. This is a really fun and interesting character study / coming of age film, and Belle Powley was fantastic in it. I really did love this one. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Next up was a rewatch from 2011. I wanted to watch something starring Anton Yelchin for his birthday. Really do miss him. He's a fantastic actor. But that is 2011's The Beaver, starring Jodie Foster and Mel Gibson, as well as Jennifer Lawrence and Anton Yelchin. This is directed by Jodie Foster as well. I know that I might be somewhat in the minority here, but this is one of my favorite films of all time. Again, I love films that tackle mental health, and I especially love the unique approach that this one takes to mental health. On the surface, it sounds like it could be kind of a disrespectful take, but it actually is a really profound take on depression and what it can do to a person, and how a person might try to deal with having depressive thoughts like Mel Gibson's character does in this film. And I just think it's really interesting, and all of the characters are really well fleshed out. It, you know, does follow Mel Gibson primarily, but all of the characters are really well fleshed out, including Anton Yelchin and Jennifer Lawrence's characters, and a little bit of a side plot in which they're developing a friendship and a relationship. So yeah, I really love this film. Again, I think I might be in the minority with this one, but I give this one a 5 out of 5. I love this movie. Next up is a film from 2016, and that is Things to Come, starring Isabelle Huppert. I can't remember which streaming service I watched this on. I will maybe write it here if I remember. But either way, I love Isabelle Huppert, so I was very keen to check this one out. Again, a really interesting character study. I know I say that a lot, but I am definitely drawn to character studies and I gravitate towards them. Again, Isabelle Huppert is one of my absolute favorite actresses, and everything I've seen her in, she just tackles the subject matter very well and just becomes the character. You hardly even see her as an actress, to be honest. Yeah, this is a really well done character study. I don't know that it would have been as good if it had someone different than Isabelle Huppert, but with her in the role, I give it a 4 out of 5. We got another Jacques Demy film here, and that's 1961's Lola. This is another one from the Criterion collection. It is available in the Jacques Demy box set. I believe this was his first film, if I'm not mistaken. This is not a musical. This is my first Jacques Demy film that is not a musical that I've watched. This is 88 minutes long, so it's pretty short. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. I felt like it had a lot of similar elements and plot devices to some of his other films like Young Girls of Rochefort and Umbrellas of Cherbourg, but kind of just took out the musical element of it. It's a little slower paced than his other movies, and I didn't connect with it quite as much as his others, but I may have gone in, you know, with kind of high expectations since I love those other two films. But I did enjoy it for what it was, and I'm really excited because I ordered Model Shop from Arrow Academy, which is another film that features the character of Lola. So looking forward to checking that out in the future. This one I give a 4 out of 5. Next up, I watched a film from 1996 called Citizen Ruth. This was on Paramount Plus, and this stars, of course, Laura Dern and is directed by Alexander Payne. You also have a really good supporting cast in this, including Swoosie Kurtz and Mary Kay Place, who I think are two wonderful character actors, very underrated, especially Swoosie Kurtz. She does not get enough credit, but I'm a huge Alexander Payne fan. I've loved everything I've seen from him, and I knew that this one starring Laura Dern was one that I needed to check out, and it is just a fantastic satire that broaches the subject matter of abortion and does it in a really interesting and entertaining way. which may sound weird, but if you're a fan of Alexander Payne, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this one. I hope that we get a Blu-ray release of this soon because it was a great film. I give this a 4 out of 5. Next up, I watched 1957's Night of the Demon. This is the Beautiful Indicator box set. This is also known as Curse of the Demon. I think it was known as Curse of the Demon in the US, so we got that cover as well. Really been trying to watch a lot more older horror films. I love 70s and beyond horror, but I'm not as well versed in stuff from the 60s and earlier, so I was excited to check this one out. I can't remember which cut of the film I watched. I believe I watched the original full-length version, which is 96 minutes, but there are 4 different cuts on this release, which is crazy. But yeah, this was a really good horror film. Really good example of just absolute dread and suspense, and the way that they showed the demon in the movie was really creepy. I really liked it. But yeah, this is a great horror film. I give this a 4 out of 5, and I could definitely see myself enjoying it more and more on each watch, so looking forward to future watches on this one. Next up, we watched 2020's Monster Hunter, starring Mila Jovovich. Obviously, I went into this one with pretty low expectations, so I could say I was pretty satisfied with what I got. I got pretty much exactly what I expected out of it, which was a dumb creature feature with some cool looking effects and looked pretty decent on 4K, so I mean, I can't complain too much. I mean, I didn't expect it to be good, so yeah, I give this a 2.5 out of 5. Another one I talked about in my recent highlights video, but I will talk about it briefly again. That is the 1985's The Peanut Butter Solution. This is put out by Severin Films. Really wacky, out there, made for kids horror movie. They do have it in their like Severin Kids line, which I think is hilarious. I would have liked to have seen what I thought of this when I was a kid, because I think that it probably would have traumatized me a bit, and probably traumatized many kids of the 80s, but really fun horror movie. Even if it's made for kids, I think that you can find enjoyment in it because it's just wacky and out there and awesome. So really like this one, give it a 4 out of 5. Next up, I watched 2020's Crazy Samurai 400 vs. 1. This is put out by Well Go USA. I was really intrigued to check this one out because it has a 77-minute one-take film sequence, and it is an action shot, and it was really interesting. I can tell that this was kind of low budget, and they had to reuse a lot of actors in the action scene. I don't think that they actually cast 400 people in this film, but that aside, I think that it was a really ambitious idea and a cool idea. Even if it wasn't executed perfectly, I can appreciate the ambition behind it and the creativity and skill that it probably took to achieve that. So overall, I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Fun samurai flick with lots of deaths and lots of cool kills. So yeah, enjoyed this one. Next up, I decided to sit down and watch all 3 releases from Fun City Editions, one of the partner labels over at Vinegar Syndrome. And the first film I watched was 1984's Alphabet City. This was a really cool neo-noir film with some pretty decent performances, given that it was kind of a lower budget film. There's your alternate art there. Really enjoyed this one. Again, just really gritty neo-noir type film, and had some really good music in there. And I watched one of the special features, which features the star of this movie kind of talking and reminiscing about the film, and you can tell he just had the time of his life on this movie. He had a lot of really cool stories to tell about it, and that made me appreciate it all the more. But yeah, really cool neo-noir film from the 80s. Even if it is a little lower budget, it is still just a really well done flick. And these slipcovers are just absolutely gorgeous, guys. I mean, look at those. This one I give 4 out of 5. And the next one I watched from Fun City Editions was 1969's I Start Counting. This one's directed by David Green, another one that I've like literally never heard of, but another beautiful slipcover on there. This was an interesting one because this was an interesting mix of like a coming of age film. It kind of starts out with a coming of age story and kind of delving into that, and then goes into a bit more of a crime thriller towards the end. So I thought it was a really cool like genre mashup there. This is probably my least favorite of the 3, but I still did thoroughly enjoy this one. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. And continuing on with the Fun City Editions from 1973, I watched Jeremy. Now this was definitely my favorite watch of the 3, and one of my favorite watches of all of March. This film kind of came completely out of nowhere. I'd never heard of it before, but being the completionist I am, I'm picking up all of the partner label releases from Vinegar Syndrome, you know, especially since they come with these beautiful slipcovers. And this is one of those films that I'm just so glad that I picked up, because this was just a beautiful little love story and coming of age film between two young teens that meet and fall in love. It's a very simple premise, but just a beautifully done film. And again, you got a beautiful slipcover there. And just a really simple, adorable love story. On the inside, you have your theatrical artwork, which is pretty simple. And I think one of the best features of this release, and the reason I think that you should absolutely pick this up, there is a interview in the special features on this disc between the two stars of this film, and they're not together, but the interview is kind of intercut between the two of them, and they're just kind of reminiscing on their experience in the film, and also talking about how they were truly falling in love during this film. And that's very evident when you're watching the movie. Like, it feels real, it feels genuine and authentic, and I think that really adds to the experience of watching this. And if you like simple coming of age love stories, I can't see why you wouldn't like this movie. It's just so well done. And again, those performances really make this film. And the fact that they really were falling in love just makes it all the more adorable and charming. And this is just a great film. I think you guys should definitely seek this one out. I will link Vinegar Syndrome's website in the description below so that you guys can pick these up, because Jeremy is well worth your time. And, you know, checking out all of Vinegar Syndrome's catalog as well as their partner labels is also well worth your time. So definitely seek this movie out if it sounds interesting to you, because I absolutely love this film. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. And we're finally to another watch in my Criterion challenge. But like I said, I've watched quite a few Criterions this last month. I've shown a few of them, but this one was part of the challenge. It is from 1963, directed by Akira Kurosawa, and that is High and Low. This is a film I've wanted to see for a long time, so I'm glad I finally carved out some time for it. The theme of this day in the Criterion Challenge was to watch an Akira Kurosawa film, so this was an easy choice for me because, again, I wanted to see this for a really long time. This is kind of a Japanese noir film in which a executive of a shoe company is put in a very difficult situation in which his chauffeur's son is kidnapped and held hostage for ransom. And it's kind of him deciding, you know, first of all, whether or not he's even going to put up the money, you know, the money that he so desperately needs in his life at that time to save a son that is not even his. And it's just a really interesting look at morality and what you would do in this type of situation, with some fantastic performances, fantastic writing, fantastic directing. I mean, the first half, I believe, of the film pretty much takes place in one location, but I was just so engaged and so interested in the story and the performances that I didn't feel bored at all. This film is 2 hours and 23 minutes, but honestly, it pretty much flew by. It's just so perfectly, intricately paced and just so well done. This is a masterclass in filmmaking, and I'm not surprised at all, because Kurosawa is just a fantastic director, one of the all-time greats. This was a fantastic film. Overall, I give it a 4.5 out of 5, although in the future I'd probably give it a 5 out of 5 because it's just that good. If you guys have never seen this film, definitely seek it out. It's well worth your time. Fantastic film from the 60s. High and Low, absolutely love this one. Shifting gears quite a bit, we are moving up to 1998 with Small Soldiers. I know this was a disc that a lot of people were really hoping for. For many years, they wanted it to come out. I think there was like a German Blu-ray of it for many years, but it was not available on Blu-ray in the US. I had never seen it before. I think that this is probably one that I would have enjoyed even more had I seen it growing up and kind of had that nostalgia for it. However, I did enjoy it. I'm a huge Kirsten Dunst fan. I love everything I see her in, and this was a fun time. I mean, again, it's probably one that you would probably enjoy a little bit more had you seen it as a kid and kind of had that nostalgia for it. But overall, I had a fun time with it. I give it 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have another Criterion watch here. This is for the Criterion Challenge, in which you had to watch a Jean-Luc Godard film, and I picked 1960s Breathless. I've had this on my shelf for the longest time, and I've always wanted to see it. It was a little bit daunting because I haven't watched a lot of French New Wave, but this is the perfect opportunity to finally check it out, and I definitely enjoyed this film. Again, I'm not super well versed in French New Wave. I'm pretty new to it, but I've enjoyed everything I've watched so far, and Breathless is probably one of the best I've seen. I know that it was a very influential film in launching the French New Wave movement, and I can see why. It's a really interestingly shot film. It takes a lot of liberties with filmmaking that hadn't been taken before, and it's just an essential watch if you like filmmaking and you like 1960s cinema. I think that this is a great watch. And it was really fun seeing Jean Seberg in a film. Finally, I had never seen her in one before, at least that I remember, so that was really interesting. On first watch, I give this a 4 out of 5, but I think this is probably one I will enjoy even more on future watches. But definitely enjoyed it this time, and that is Breathless. Next up is a watch on HBO Max, and I'm sure everybody else in the world has watched this one as well. That's 2021's Zack Snyder's Justice League. What to say about this one? I've really rather enjoyed a lot of the DCEU films, I think even more than other people have. I'm a pretty big fan of Batman vs Superman. I really like the director's cut on that one. So I went into this one with pretty good expectations. I mean, I am a little burnout on superheroes, to be honest. And the thought of sitting down and watching a 4-hour Zack Snyder film wasn't the perfect idea for my day, but you know, I had to give it a watch. And I don't know what to say about this one, because first of all, Justice League was okay to me. Joss Whedon's Justice League was okay. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It was just kind of middle of the road for me, and it wasn't like a life or death situation that I see the Zack Snyder cut. I will say this is certainly better than the Joss Whedon cut of the film. Much better. You've got a lot more character development, especially with Cyborg, and I did appreciate that, but it just felt very self-indulgent to me, which, I mean, I guess it is. I mean, they gave Zack Snyder the reins and just let him do pretty much whatever the hell he wanted with this, and that's very evident here. And I'm not like a Zack Snyder hater. I do like Zack Snyder's films. I really like Watchmen, and the Dawn of the Dead remake is one of my favorite horror remakes for sure, but I don't know, I just didn't love this one. I liked it. Was it far too long? Yes. The aspect ratio was dumb. I think you could have just had it be widescreen. I'm perfectly fine with films being full frame if it adds to the artistic value of the film, which I didn't think was the case here. I thought it was just kind of obnoxious. It was far too long. Again, very self-indulgent, lots of slow motion scenes. I sound like I'm being very negative about it. I enjoyed it for what it was. Not looking forward to watching it again anytime soon, to be honest. Definitely better than Justice League. That's all I'll say about it. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5. It was alright. Nothing fantastic, but certainly better than Joss Whedon's cut. So that's all I'll say about it. Next up, I checked out 2020's Don't Tell a Soul, starring Rainn Wilson and Jack Dylan Grazer from It fame. I enjoyed this one. It was alright. I pretty much guessed the plot from a mile away, like the plot twist in the film. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was an entertaining flick. I mean, it was pretty short. Let's see, 96 minutes. It went by pretty quick. And the performances were decent. The ending was a little unbelievable, but overall I enjoyed it. I give it a 3 out of 5. Next up is a film directed by Robert Altman. I'm always trying to watch more of his films. This is from 1973, released by Kino Lorber, and that is The Long Goodbye. This stars Elliot Gould, who growing up I always knew as Monica and Ross's dad from Friends, but you know, there's obviously a lot more to his career, and this was a great film. When I hear people talk about Robert Altman, oftentimes I hear this cited as people's favorite Robert Altman film, so I knew I needed to watch it because I'm really getting into his filmography. I could definitely see why. I don't know that this is my favorite that I've watched of his so far, but it was a really interesting neo-noir with a fantastic performance by Elliot Gould. He's just so laid back and chill in this movie, which is incredible given the circumstances that his character is put in, but yeah, definitely enjoyed this neo-noir film from Robert Altman. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Next up, we have a film from 2014. This is a rewatch, and that is Dear White People. This one I haven't seen pretty much since it was released. I bought it pretty much blindly back then in 2014 or 2015, whenever it came out on disc, and I liked it, but I don't remember loving it, and I could hardly remember anything about it, to be honest, so I was glad that Andrew picked this one out to watch. And I really enjoyed it this time. I don't know what I was thinking the first time. I think I only gave it like 3 stars, but this is a fantastically done satire film. You got Tessa Thompson in here in one of her best performances that I've seen, And yeah, it's just so well written, so witty and funny, and just a fantastic example of how to do a satire. And I think that this film might even be more relevant in 2021 than it was in 2014, which is sad to say, but yeah, it is. It's a really, really well done film. Really enjoyed this one. I give it a 4 out of 5. This next film is from 2013, and I have kind of a funny story with this one. When I watch movies, I always finish them. Even if I don't love them, I always finish them. I have never walked out of a movie theater. I just always like to finish films. But this is one movie that I started at one point and just never finished. Not because I disliked it, but because I got distracted, to be honest. Andrew and I were on a date, and it was when we were kind of long distance dating at the time. Long distance, I mean, it was like we lived like an hour away from each other, and we kind of had limited time together, and we always were trying to pick out, you know, what the best movie to watch would be. And I remember we put this one on, and I don't know if we just like got into talking and thought of another movie, but we ended up stopping it and putting the other movie on, and then we just never came back and finished this one, which is kind of funny. And it's been so many years since, you know, it's 2021, and we finally sat down and watched it in its entirety. This is the only film in my collection that was like that, so I'm glad I finally watched it, and that is 2013's Bad Words, starring Jason Bateman. You also got Kathryn Hahn in here, which, like I mentioned, is one of my favorite actresses. She's so good. And Allison Janney, she's fucking fantastic in everything. So good. She has kind of a small part in this one, but yeah, she's still in there nonetheless. This is a fun movie. I think that some of the humor wouldn't even fly just 8 years later. I think that there was kind of some iffy humor in there, but it was fun. It took some really interesting turns, and again, some humor that was a little off kilter. I think this was directed by Jason Bateman, which is really interesting. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. My one complaint is it kind of just fell off towards the end. It was really funny and really different at the beginning in the first 2 acts. It almost felt like it kind of just had like a Hollywood ending thrown onto it, which I didn't love. I kind of wish that it had kept like the same tone that it had the first 2 acts throughout the whole film, but that wasn't enough for me to say that I disliked it by any means. Overall, I give this a 3.5 out of 5. If you're a Jason Bateman fan, definitely give it a watch. Also got Kathryn Hahn in there, so yeah, well worth your time. Bad Words. Glad I finally finished it. And another one of our Jaws ripoff watches for the month. This is from 1976, and that is Mako, Jaws of Death. This is featured in the William Graffet He Came from the Swamp box set from Arrow. I didn't pull it off the shelf because it's huge, but yeah, that's where this one is from. And then you got your individual art here for that film. This movie, not really so much of a Jaws ripoff as you might think. It's a bit more of an exploitation flick that focuses a lot more on the human characters than the shark, which if you go in expecting it to be a Jaws ripoff, you might be disappointed like we kind of were. It's very slow moving, not great. Probably will watch it again at some point, but probably give this a 2.5 out of 5. Right, so like I mentioned, I did travel a bit this last month. I went to Seattle to visit my sister and nephews, and so these next several watches are going to be either things that I watched in travel, like on the plane, or that I watched with my sister and nephews. So just to preface that, the first thing I watched on my way to Seattle is a film that I've been meaning to see for a very long time, and that's 1980's 9 to 5. I do own this one on Vudu, so I watched it on there. However, I think that it is available on Hulu as well, and it is available on Blu-ray from Twilight Time, but it's very out of print and very expensive. Really wish I had that in my collection, especially just because I loved this movie. Oh my god, it was so good. You got Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton just kind of in the prime of their careers. And I stand by this. Lily Tomlin is one of the funniest women on earth. She's just so fucking hilarious. And her line delivery in this movie is perfect. You know, just in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, she's already laid down a bunch of lines that are just so perfectly delivered, so funny.
I'm a doctor. So why the hell am I talking to you? Piss off.
And Jane Fonda is also really good in this. I've kind of been addicted to watching Jane Fonda films lately, and it kind of started with 9 to 5. And yeah, everybody's so good in this. Dolly Parton as well is really great. Of course, the classic 9 to 5 song, fantastic. Hilarious humor. It took a lot of turns I was not expecting because I didn't know too much about the plot going into it. somehow, impressively, I didn't know too much, and I just had a hell of a lot of fun with this movie. And the subject matter that it broaches, you know, inequality in the workplace, still relevant today, 40 years later, which is insane and sad and frustrating, but nonetheless, this is a hilarious movie, one of the all-time comedy greats in my opinion. And I was a little surprised to hop on my Letterboxd after watching it and seeing that it kind of got so-so reviews from a lot of people. I don't know, I just really connected with this movie, thought it was hilarious. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Love 9 to 5. If I can get my hands on that Twilight Time release for a decent price, I will definitely do that. But if not, I really hope that another company will release this movie. And either way, I really do hope that another company releases this, because more people need to have 9 to 5 in their collection. Just a fucking hilarious comedy. Love 9 to 5. Now, the next movie I watched was with my sister and nephews. All of these were on streaming. I'll try to remember where I watched them, but I will show my Blu-rays because I do own all of these. My sister and my youngest nephew love horror, so of course there's some horror watches in here. First one is from 1990, and that is Misery. This is the Scream Factory edition, of course. I think we watched it on HBO Max. I probably should have written it down, but yeah, Misery. Obviously, this is a classic Stephen King story. You got your theatrical artwork in there. Sorry, I have to look at my screen, make sure there's not too much glare. But Kathy Bates, James Caan. I mean, Kathy Bates is just a powerhouse in this movie. She's so good. This is probably the best she's ever been, and she's just a fantastic actress, so that is saying a lot. And just the tension and dread in this movie is so good. Yeah, this is a fantastic movie. If you've never seen it for some reason, you definitely need to watch it. This is a 4.5 out of 5 star film for me. Love Misery. And the next thing we watched is a film that I was really surprised my sister had never seen. Not as surprised that my nephew hadn't seen it, but my sister had never seen this, which is insane. She was born in the 80s, I was born in the 90s, and somehow she never saw this. And that is 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street. Come on. What was she doing? She'd never seen this movie. This is one of the all-time great slasher films. Although growing up in my household, we did watch Halloween pretty much exclusively. We watched Halloween all of the time, so we did abandon Freddy and Jason a little bit in our house growing up. But yeah, I was very happy to show Nightmare on Elm Street to her and my nephew for the first time. They really enjoyed it. I love this movie. It's one of the classics. Really hoping that Scream Factory releases a box set. That would be amazing if it was like the Halloween and Friday the 13th box sets, which if they do get the rights for these films, I'm sure that they wouldn't let us down. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, fucking fantastic movie. I wanted to show her Dream Warriors because she'd never seen any of the sequels either. And interestingly enough, that was like the only one that wasn't available on HBO Max, which is really odd. But yeah, always happy to rewatch Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my favorite slashers. So much fun. 4.5 out of 5. And the next movie I showed her is from 1994. That's Tammy and the T-Rex. This is such a fun movie to show people because it is just batshit crazy, perfect definition of so bad it's good. I love this movie with Paul Walker and Denise Richards. Got this awesome slipcover from Vinegar Syndrome. I got the lenticular side as well. This is a 4K disc, believe it or not. 4K of Tammy and the T-Rex. But yeah, I watched it on streaming with her. She had a fun time with it. I have a fun time with this movie. So much fun. It's not a good film by any means, but just so much fun. 3.5 out of 5 for me on Tammy and the T-Rex. So much fun. And then another really good, so bad it's good film from 1986, we have Chopping Mall. This is the Vestron video release. I had never seen this movie before Vestron released it, and I watched it shortly after it came out and really loved it. It's a great killer robot movie, and it takes place in the mall. It kind of reminds me of Dawn of the Dead in that way, you know, just because of the mall setting. I love the mall setting for a horror film. It just works so well. And this is really cheesy, but really, really fun. One of my favorite 80s horror flicks, and I really love the soundtrack to this one. In fact, I have it on vinyl. Just an awesome flick. This is a 4 out of 5 star film for me. Shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to show her one of my recent favorites from 2016. That's The Intervention, directed by Clea Duvall. Sorry, it's probably not showing up super great on the camera, but I love this movie. And my sister really liked her other movie, Happiest Season, and I was like, you've never seen The Intervention? You gotta watch this. So I showed it to her. I can't remember what streaming service this is on. I know I own it on Vudu. This is just a Blu-ray cover I designed for the film because it's not available on Blu-ray, unfortunately, but it's one of my favorites. It has definite big chill vibes, you know, a group of friends get together and plan an intervention for their friends that they think should get a divorce. So kind of an awkward scenario they put themselves in my opinion. Probably not something I would ever do, but led to some really funny situations and just a great character study, great character dynamics, and really fantastic performances. It's got a wonderful cast. You have Clea Duvall herself, Melanie Lynskey, Natasha Lyonne, Vincent Piazza, who is the one I hadn't ever seen in anything before, but he was really good in it. Jason Ritter, Ben Schwartz, Leah Shawkat, and Kobe Smulders, one of my absolute favorite actresses. So yeah, The Intervention, if you've never seen it, I love this movie. I probably love it more than most, but I really do love it. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. Love this movie. And then my youngest nephew, he's really into Spider-Man and Venom and all of that right now, so we watched a few of these with him. First one is 2018's Venom. He had never seen this before, but he had really been wanting to check it out, and you know, since I went Blu-ray hunting so many places while I was in Seattle, he picked up a few movies as well, and this is one of the ones he picked up, so we watched it. I know this movie gets a lot of hate, but I have fun with it, to be honest. I think it's an enjoyable time. It's not great by any means, but it is a fun time. I like Tom Hardy. You got Jenny Slate in there as well. Really love Jenny Slate. I have a really small part from Michelle Williams. I don't know, it's got a really good cast for what it is. I'd probably give this 3 out of 5. I enjoy it. And the next thing my nephew wanted to watch was the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. I have the 4K Steelbook box set here. I don't want to get them all out, so I'll just hold this up. Of course, Spider-Man came out in 2002, and Spider-Man 2 came out in 2004. I really enjoy both of those. In fact, I think I enjoy them more now than I did when they initially came out, but I have always really liked them. Again, I'm a huge Kirsten Dunst fan, so I have to like those movies for that reason alone. The first 2 films I would give 4 out of 5 stars. Spider-Man 3, which came out in 2007, not nearly as good. It's just okay. Probably give it 3 out of 5. I have an okay time with it. Topher Grace is terrible in it, but yeah, it's an alright watch. Overall, pretty solid trilogy. Do enjoy these films quite a bit. And yeah, this is a really cool little Steelbook box set here. Not sure how well that's showing up, but yeah. Don't want to get all those out, but yeah, Spider-Man trilogy, have a fun time with it. And then on the way home, I took advantage of my Criterion channel trial that I have going, and the first thing I checked out was 1966's Tokyo Drifter. Always heard good things about this film. It's directed by Seijun Suzuki, hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, a director that I've heard tons about over the years. And again, I've really been getting into not only Asian cinema a lot lately, but 60s cinema. So Tokyo Drifter was definitely one that I wanted to check out, and man, this film was awesome. It's very short and sweet, very to the point, but it has a lot of really great action, great suspense, great tension. But even beyond that, it's so beautifully shot. The use of color and just interesting shot composition just really leads to a fantastic overall film. I give this 4.5 out of 5, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the Criterion disc in the next sale because it was just so good. And then another film I checked out is a film from 1940, quite a bit different, but another short and sweet film with a runtime of 67 minutes. Directed by Preston Sturges, I checked out Christmas in July, which has absolutely nothing to do with Christmas, but yeah, I've really enjoyed everything I've seen from Preston Sturges so far. This might be one of my favorite films I've seen from him, to be honest. I don't know why, I really connected with this one. I still need to check out Sullivan's Travels. That was actually one of the very first Criterions that I picked up that was not Wes Anderson or horror, and I still haven't watched it, so I definitely need to watch it. Christmas in July was a great flick. Really great performances, especially from Dick Powell, who plays our lead character, Jimmy. Real quickly to tell you what it's about. An office clerk loves entering contests in the hopes of someday winning a fortune and marrying the girl he loves. His latest attempt is the Maxford House Coffee slogan contest. As a joke, some of his co-workers put together a fake telegram which says that he won the $25,000 grand prize. So yeah, great premise for a movie, and it was very engaging. I was interested from beginning to end. Really enjoyed that film. I give it 4 out of 5. Next up is a rewatch from 2014, and that is Godzilla. I know a lot of people are kind of mixed on this movie, but I've enjoyed it from the first time that I saw it, and I enjoyed it again on this rewatch. Great performances in this movie. I know it focuses a lot more on the characters than people would have liked, but I thought the characters were well fleshed out and pretty interesting, so I've always enjoyed this film. I enjoyed it on this watch. It looks fantastic on 4K, sounds fantastic. You got a Dolby Atmos track on there. So if you're a fan of the film, it's well worth an upgrade. This is my favorite of the recent Monster Universe movies. I know that might be an unpopular opinion, but I just love this movie. I think it's really well done. I give this 4 out of 5. And then of course we also watched 2017's Kong Skull Island. This was a rewatch as well. I remember really being impressed by this one when I saw it in theaters. It was a spectacle to see, and I'm really happy that it's on 4K because it looks fantastic at home as well. Although this isn't as good as Godzilla, I do enjoy this one for what it is. Kong is a really cool character and he looks awesome in this movie. And yeah, you got Tom Hiddleston, Samuel Jackson, Brie Larson, John C. Reilly. Really good cast in this one as well. And yeah, overall I give this one a 4 out of 5. Enjoy it a little bit less than Godzilla, but definitely enjoy this one as well. Another watch on the Criterion channel was 1965's Cat Ballou. Now this movie ticked off a few boxes for me. I've been trying to watch more westerns because it's definitely one of my most underseen genres, along with like documentary and film noir. Definitely need to see more. And it's a 60s film and it stars Jane Fonda. So definitely have to give this a watch. And I have to say I enjoyed this. I have mostly watched spaghetti westerns, to be honest, and this was my first kind of like comedic western, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But I thought it was a lot of fun. I think I may have enjoyed it more than, you know, even like the Letterboxd crowd who gave it 3.2. I give this a 4 out of 5. I thought it was a lot of fun. Lee Marvin plays a dual role and is really good in it. Jane Fonda's adorable. Just a fun time. And man, freaking Twilight Time with the Jane Fonda releases, like they're holding them hostage or something. It's out of print and it's expensive as well, so maybe one day I'll be able to pick that up, but I'm glad I was able to watch it on the Criterion channel. Awesome. Cat Ballou, definitely enjoyed. Next up from 2020, we checked out Psycho Goreman. This is released by RLJE Films, and man, this is just a really fun movie. Had so much fun with this one. Not really straight horror, it has some horror elements, but it's kind of just like a fun like sci-fi fantasy movie. I could definitely see a younger audience enjoying this as well. It's got a lot of great one-liners, great humor, just a really fun flick. Loved Psycho Goreman. And I don't like this art too much, but RLJE did us a solid and gave us reverse art on this one, so that's pretty sweet. Yeah, Psycho Goreman, definitely one of the most fun films I've seen lately. Overall, I give it 4 out of 5. A lot of fun with this one. And continuing on with the Jaws ripoffs, Andrew and I had kind of a shark Sunday, if you will, and we watched 1981's The Last Shark on Amazon Prime. This was a definite ripoff. You have footage from some other movies in here. It has kind of just like a nonsensical plot, but I certainly had fun with this one. Probably more fun than I've had with some of the other Jaws ripoffs. Overall, I give this a 3 out of 5. Now, you may have thought that The Last Shark was the ultimate ripoff, but may I present to you from 1995 the ultimate Jaws ripoff right here. From Severin Films, we have Cruel Jaws, also known as Jaws 5. This obviously is an unapproved slipcover here, but you know, Severin doing the Lord's work, releasing awesome shit like this. And yeah, Jaws 5. Wow, this is a ripoff of a ripoff. You thought The Last Shark was a ripoff? This is a ripoff of The Last Shark and Jaws. I mean, you even have like a Star Wars song in here. I don't know how they managed to get away with making this movie, but man, this is just a spectacle to see. It's worth watching just to see how much of a ripoff it is. I didn't enjoy this as much as The Last Shark, but man, it was something. I give this 2.5 out of 5. Next up on VOD, I watched 2020's The Father. This was a film that I've really been looking forward to. For one, I love Anthony Hopkins. For two, I love Olivia Colman. And the subject matter looked really interesting. And this was a fantastic film. Definitely did not let me down. The performances were so wonderful, especially Anthony Hopkins. He gave a very believable performance as a person suffering from dementia. And one thing that I appreciated about this film was the storytelling. It really threw you into the character of Anthony, and you felt like you were experiencing what he was experiencing along with him. And you know, you are kind of confused, but it does kind of lead you, you know, to that pathos and that empathy to understand what it would be like to go through dementia. I mean, at least to the best of our ability. And yeah, the editing was fantastic. Again, the performances were just so good. This is a fantastic film. So good, so fantastic. I would give this a 4.5 out of 5. And we have another 2020 watch here. That is The Last Blockbuster. Had to pick this up on Blu-ray. It kind of felt like sacrilegious to watch this on Netflix. This is a really interesting story of, you know, Blockbuster and kind of their downfall, and also just the really charming story of the last Blockbuster, which is in Oregon somewhere. I can't remember the name of the city, but yeah, a really charming story. It's not like a groundbreaking documentary by any means, but it is just full of nostalgia, really fun documentary that had my eyes glued to the screen. And you also got like Kevin Smith and Adam Brody and many other names, you know, Jamie Kennedy, Sam Levine, lots of cool celebrities pop in to talk about Blockbuster and kind of their experience with rental store days. This is just a really fun documentary. Definitely give it a watch if it sounds interesting, because I think you will enjoy it and connect with it like I did. I give this a 4 out of 5. Next up is a film from 1990 released by Scream Factory. That is Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. Now I have to say, I've never watched the Tales from the Dark Side show. I do own it, so I will watch it at some point, but I've never seen it. But I am a big fan of horror anthologies, and this film did not let me down. This was a really cool anthology. I think it may even be one of the best horror anthology films I have ever seen. It was just so much fun. I really liked all of the stories that were in there, as well as the wraparound story, which, you know, makes a difference. The wraparound story has to be good too, in my opinion, for it to be a fully successful anthology film. But this definitely was. It was just a lot of fun, and some great artwork from Scream Factory there. Loved this movie. I give it 4 out of 5. And the next movie I watched was in theaters. Oh man, this year's been weird. This is only the second movie I've seen in theaters in 2021, and only the first new release movie I saw. I saw Bridesmaids earlier on this year. I rented a theater for my family to go watch one of our favorite comedies together, and then I watched this film, which is 2021's Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk. This movie was so much fun. It was nice to get back in the theater. I haven't been going much, you know, out of an abundance of caution, seeing how we're living in a pandemic, but also just a lot of movies have been accessible and available at home, and it just hasn't felt worth it to me. I love the theater experience, I do, but I also do have social anxiety, and take that and combine it with a pandemic, and it leads to a very uncomfortable situation for me sometimes. So going to the theater is not a priority for me right now. I love the theater, but it's just not a priority. And again, a lot of movies have just been very easy and available to watch at home, so I've just chosen to do that. But I had a couple Cinemark passes, so I decided to go ahead and check this movie out because it looked like a lot of fun, and it did not disappoint. This movie was so much fun. Lots of action, lots of gore, lots of blood. Just a really fun John Wick-esque revenge flick. I just had so much fun with it, and Bob Odenkirk, perfect for the role. He's a great actor, very underappreciated. Overall, I give this 4 out of 5. Lots of fun. From 1984, we watched Monster Shark, aka Devilfish, another Jaws ripoff. I think Andrew said that this was his least favorite of the Jaws ripoffs that we watched in the month. I would probably say that Cruel Jaws was mine, but it was a spectacle to watch, like I said. This one, it has that really Italian feel. This is directed by Lamberto Bava, who is a director I actually really like. But yeah, it's nothing to write home about. It's nothing special. Overall, I'd probably give it 2.5 out of 5. Next up, we have one of the new titles from Vinegar Syndrome, and that is 1989's Rush Week. Now, I may have gone into this with a little higher of expectations than I should have, but I'm a big slasher fan. I even like, you know, some of the lower tier slashers, but overall, this one just, it didn't connect with me too much. It just didn't have enough kills. It didn't have enough violence, I guess. Maybe I'll enjoy it more on rewatch in the future. But overall, it was just okay to me. It needed a lot more action, but I'd probably give this a 2.5 out of 5. It was all right. Nothing fantastic, but yeah, Vinegar Syndrome does always do beautiful slipcovers, so at least you can count on them for that. And that's Rush Week. And we have another Jane Fonda watch here from 1969. We have They Shoot Horses, Don't They? This is put out by Kino Lorber and directed by Sidney Pollack, another director that I need to watch more from. This movie, I didn't know too much about the plot. I had always just heard that it was a really harrowing but very well done film, and that certainly was what I got. I don't want to say too much about the plot because I don't want to give it away, because it's kind of just something to experience. But I will say this movie follows two characters, actually several characters. This takes place in the Great Depression, in which they enter into a dancing competition to win some money, which, you know, it sounds pretty harmless, right? But it kind of just goes into the lack of humanity that was present in the Great Depression and the struggles that people went through just to make some money. And it takes some really, really dark turns, and I think that's all I'll say about it because I don't want to ruin it, but I really love this movie. Very depressing, very harrowing, very bleak watch, but if you're prepared for that, it's a fantastic film with fantastic performances. I give this 4.5 out of 5. I was blown away by this one. Next up, from 1982, we have a film released by Severin Films, and that is Next of Kin. Really like this movie. My friend on Instagram, Chase and Screams, reminded me that I needed to give it a watch, and man, this movie was awesome. The atmosphere in this film was just top-notch, so perfect. It had kind of a Dario Argento kind of feel to it, which is a huge compliment because Dario Argento is one of my absolute favorite filmmakers. So yeah, this film just had absolutely perfect atmosphere, great sense of dread. It is a little slow moving, but it's so worth it in the end. I believe this is an Australian film. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with Next of Kin. I probably give this film 4 out of 5. Great release from Severin. If you're just looking for a really stylish and suspenseful, atmospheric film, look no further than Next of Kin. Great flick, 4 out of 5. Then we have another Criterion watch here, and it is from 1945, and it is called Detour. This one had been recommended to me a few times in films to watch if you wanted to get more into film noir. This is only 69 minutes long, so it's a really quick watch, but I really enjoyed this. I haven't seen a lot of film noir, but this was a very bleak watch, probably the bleakest film noir film I've seen yet. And yeah, I just really liked it. I don't want to go into the plot too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, very bleak but well done film noir. Enjoyed it a lot. Give it 4 out of 5. Next up, I rewatched 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. I know this film kind of gets a lot of hate, but I've always really enjoyed it. It's got a lot of really fun monster fighting action. I love King Ghidorah in this film. Again, it does suffer a little bit because of the human characters. They're not super interesting, probably the least interesting in this film. I do enjoy it for what it is. It's a fun, schlocky, monster fighting action flick. Overall, I give this 3.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched 1990's The King of New York. This is the Arrow Video 4K release with just a gorgeous slipcover on there. Always heard about this film, have always wanted to check it out. I really like Abel Ferrara. I've really enjoyed everything I've seen by him, and this is probably his best film. You got Christopher Walken, Lawrence Fishburne, Wesley Snipes, and Steve Buscemi. Really well done neo-noir film with some great performances, great characters. Really did enjoy this one. I give this 4.5 out of 5. Loved it. Perhaps my most random watch of the month, but I was looking on Letterboxd and I saw so many good reviews for this movie, and it just seems like such a random film that I knew nothing about, but I'm really glad that I finally gave it a watch. And it is from 2011, and it is called Detention. This stars Josh Hutcherson, Shanley Caswell, Spencer Locke, and Dane Cook. All I can say about this movie is it is batshit crazy, a really wild modern slasher that has a lot of pop culture references, kind of a lot to digest, a lot to take in. And I think that this is going to take multiple viewings for me to fully appreciate, but all I know is I loved it. It was fucking crazy and wild. And if that sounds like something that would be interesting to you, definitely watch it. 4.5 out of 5 for me. Awesome movie. Kind of came out of nowhere. And then I have another streaming watch here from 1977. I watched Fun with Dick and Jane. Another Jane Fonda watch for me. This movie I'm kind of mixed on. You got George Segal and Jane Fonda, you know, fantastic cast and a pretty fun premise. There were a few things that really took me out of the film though. There's kind of some racist and homophobic things in there that I did not care for at all. I don't think this film is very PC. I didn't think that we would ever get a Blu-ray release for it, but randomly Sony announced a Blu-ray the other day, which is really surprising to me in this political climate that we live in, but here we are. They are releasing it. I enjoyed the last act. The heist itself was a lot of fun, and I think that they did the best they could with what they were given, you know, with the plot, but yeah, the homophobic and racist stuff I just can't move past. Yeah, I'd give it 3 out of 5. It was alright. And real quickly, the last thing that I watched in March of 2021 is Godzilla vs. Kong. I think everybody watched this on the 31st. I was really looking forward to this movie because, like you've heard in my previous thoughts, I have really enjoyed the MonsterVerse for what it is. But I was pretty disappointed in this one. I am going to watch it again when it comes out on 4K, but overall, Godzilla vs. Kong is my least favorite of the MonsterVerse. I just thought it was so cheesy. The plot just was so thin. It had nowhere to go. And while the action scenes between Godzilla and Kong were fantastic, the human characters and all of the side plots leading up to it just did not work for me at all. And I'm a huge Rebecca Hall fan. She's one of my absolute favorite actresses. If you guys have never seen Christine, definitely go watch that movie. It's so good. One of my favorite performances in any film ever. And I like Alexander Skarsgård, but yeah, this film just kind of fell flat for me, to be honest. I mean, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen by any means, but in the context of the MonsterVerse, I did not love it. Probably only give it a 3 out of 5, but again, I am going to watch it again, and I will go in, you know, with an open mind and try to enjoy it more. But didn't love Godzilla vs. Kong, kind of disappointed in that one. But overall, a really solid month of watches, lots of first time watches, lots of label watches, watched a lot of Criterions, lots of horror flicks, lots of Japanese cinema, 1960s films, had a lot of fun. If you guys have any recommendations for me, let me know in the comments down below. If you guys have any thoughts on the things that I watched, definitely let me know about that. Yeah, I enjoyed this month very much. I had a lot of fun with everything that I watched. Real quickly, I'll just let you know what my least favorite watch of the month was and what my favorite watch of the month was. My least favorite, honestly, is kind of like a four-way tie between Cruel Jaws, Jaws of Death, Monster Hunter, and Monster Shark. I didn't hate any of them, but I didn't love any of those either. A lot of 2.5 ratings this month. And my favorite watches, it's so hard. Well, the 2 films that I gave 5 out of 5 stars this month were Oldboy and A Separation, so I'll probably just say those two. Those 2 were absolutely fantastic. But yeah, lots of good stuff this month. Thank you guys so much for watching. Huge shout out to our executive producer patron, Chase Wilson. We appreciate your support. You're awesome. Huge shout out to our other 2 patrons that have signed up. We will drop their names on the screen somewhere. Thank you guys so much for that. If you guys are interested in becoming a patron, please consider doing so. The links are in the description box below. Also check out our Amazon wishlist if you want to send us something that way or support us in some of the other ways. We also have a merch store that we set up, so be sure to check that out. We appreciate you guys being here. Please like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit the notification bell to get notifications when we upload new videos, and we will see you on the next one.